Guys, I'm Major Jeff Cotner of the Crimes Against Persons Division, and that's Major Rob Sherman of the Crimes Against Persons Division. If you'll just you see us up here quite often. The Crimes Against Persons Division has two sections. I have the violent crime section, and Rob has the youth services section. So Rob's going to be able to talk to you guys about the domestic violence piece to this incident, shooting, up to a point, and then I'll pick it up. We'll a little transition in that regard, and I'll talk about the actual officer-involved piece. First, I want to let you know who our deceased is. The suspect's name is Stephen Douglas. That's S-T-E-V-E-N. Last name is Douglas, D-O-U-G-L-A-S. Douglas is a black male. His date of birth is 2/20 of 1985. Our involved officer is Officer Rogelio Moreno, R-O-G-E-L-I-O. Last name Moreno, M-O-R-E-N-O. Officer Moreno's been on the Dallas Police Department 7 years. He's currently assigned to the South Central Patrol Division.
Guys, what I'm going to do is try to provide you guys with the information as to how this episode started to unfold. On Saturday, August 23rd at about 7:21, our complainant called the police from her mother's apartment to report that Mr. Douglas had pointed a gun at her and had threatened to shoot her due to her dating another man. Patrol officers responded, and a report for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon was made on incident number 203-31, so it's 203-331-2014. The complainant stated that she was staying with her mother on Wyoming Street in Dallas to avoid the suspect. Sunday goes by and there's no incident. Our complainant has 2 children with Mr. Douglas. Today, at about 7:20 a.m., the complainant took her 3 children, she has 3 children, 2 of them with the suspect, back to her apartment in the 3100 block of Easter Avenue to get things for the children because school's starting. She states that the suspect's green Ford Ranger pickup truck was outside the apartment, and she called him on her cell phone, on his cell phone. At 7:23, we receive a partial 911 call. She asked for the police to be dispatched, but she hangs up on the dispatcher. The suspect came outside. This is all according to her statements. The suspect came outside, spots her, and immediately begins chasing her and the children in his vehicle. She's driving a black Hyundai. She again recontacts 911 at around 7:26 a.m. and stays on the phone with our dispatcher throughout the entire episode while he's chasing her. The complainant states several times during the recordings that he has a gun and that she is trying to head to a police station. During the conversation, her tire is flattened, so we don't know what happened. She states repeatedly she's trying to ram her vehicle, but you can hear on the audio tape that the tire is flat, and you can hear it clearly in the background. Somewhere around, we believe, Siebers in Illinois is when her car becomes finally disabled and he rams the vehicle. We hear some screaming in the background, and she reports that he grabs the window and with his hands pulls the window and breaks it. He then takes his gun and points it at the children and grabs a 9-year-old female, his daughter, and a 1-year-old black male. He puts them in the truck and then leaves the scene. At that point, patrol steps in and begins trying to find the children and our suspect. And I'll turn it back over to Jeff to fill you in on that part.
So officers from the South Central Patrol Division and our Fusion section are actively pursuing leads to recover the children and identify the whereabouts of Douglas. And as they did that, they pinged, or they checked certain locations that Douglas was known to frequent, and they also began to ping his phone. Part of that information led us to also get the assistance of the Balch Springs Police Department, because there was an address in Balch Springs that possibly was related to this, and that would have been the residence of Douglas. His mother's residence in Balch Springs. His phone was pinged. That ping led us to an apartment complex on Pratt. Pratt's a street that parallels Zhang, just north of Wynwood Village. There's an apartment complex there. and South Central officers and deployment officers went to the location and observed an unoccupied green Ford pickup truck at the location. As the officers were organizing at the scene, Douglas emerged, got into the vehicle, and drove away. The officers in marked police vehicles and in uniform attempted to conduct a felony stop, and Douglas fled, which led to the pursuit. The pursuit terminated in the intersection of Prairie Creek and Lake June. At that intersection, Douglas T-boned a van. The van was carrying a mother and a toddler. She had just been to the grocery store. Neither one of those individuals were injured, thankfully. The driver of the van reported that Douglas reached into his car for an object and carried it in his hand as he ran away. Douglas ran toward an automotive repair business on the southeast corner of the intersection. Employees at that business observed Douglas was fleeing from officers and that he was armed. Douglas began to stumble as he passed a parked car at a service island at that location. His momentum carried him into the middle service bay. As he was falling, he turned and pointed a small caliber pistol directly at Officer Moreno. Officer Moreno discharged his weapon, resulting in Douglas' death. Employees report Douglas pointed his pistol at Officer Moreno. There are several fact witnesses to the shooting. In-depth interviews with all are ongoing. 2 witnesses reported Douglas was shot in the back. Those witnesses have been interviewed and told detectives they did not witness the shooting, and that their version came from others at the location. Detectives are actively pursuing anyone that we have not spoken with that may have information, and in particular may have witnessed the shooting, and they're encouraged to call the Special Investigations Unit or Homicide here at the Dallas Police Department. Detectives are reviewing dash cam video, and they're canvassing nearby businesses for possible video. The helicopter was on scene. It also broadcast, or I'm sorry, it also captures video. It did not capture it just because the pursuit ended and the helicopter had to go in an orbit, and so during that little time frame the shooting occurred, and so it's not captured on helicopter video. And Officer Moreno has been placed on routine administrative leave.
Was there short video?
I'm sorry, there was no body cam. Kim.
Did you recover the weapon?
Yes, there is a pistol recovered. Yes, ma'am. There was a small caliber handgun or pistol that was recovered at the scene.
Where was the suspect struck? What part of his body?
Well, the medical examiner did a field investigation. They're going to conduct an autopsy, we believe, within the next 24 hours, and we'll await the findings of the autopsy.
How did it appear, though? I mean, it was pretty. You have experienced people on the scene.
That's something that law enforcement doesn't do, but we let the medical examiners render those findings for us, and they'll be able to get to us within 24 hours.
Were all the officers, including Officer Moreno, that were involved at the end of the pursuit, aware of the history of the weekend and also what had been on this morning? They knew what he was wanted.
The interviews with those officers are ongoing right now. They're in depth. They did have a lot of the information that occurred this morning. Now, how much of the information they had that Major Sherman referred to back to Saturday night, it's unknown. They were aware that he was armed. And something I didn't mention earlier is that Douglas communicated with individuals in the pursuit. He made phone calls while he was in pursuit. The content, we have not been able to corroborate this yet because it's on cell phones and things like that, but the effect of the message was he wasn't going back to jail.
Jeff, it's my understanding
Yeah,
that the
Rebecca.
children were found at Fox Springs at the grandmother's house, or where were the children
I thought it was the
found?
mother's, but okay.
Mother, grandmother.
It may be the mother's house. We're still, of course, going through all that information, but I think, and I speak back to the original question about what the officers knew. I think all the officers knew was that they had 2 children taken by an armed man. With that information in mind, I think the patrol officers did very appropriately, started doing what they could. The mother was brought down to domestic violence immediately so that a statement could be taken and all the information we could try to do to find leads where he might be with those children. During the same time that that's going on, the phone pinging is happening and we're trying to get a location on it. And the first primary deal was to find the children. That's the primary. The secondary was to find Mr. Douglas. So, and all this is occurring at the same time. So it's kind of spotty how the timeline's going to be put down.
Is there a reason why you didn't issue an Amber Alert?
There was no time. Amber Alert, you have to have a statement, you have to know that the child's in danger, and all that information is preliminary. The officers appropriately figured out that the children were in danger, they displayed a gun, and they were moving through quickly, but the first thing to do on that would be to call Fusion and see if you could get that phone location.
How much time elapsed between when the kids were taken and when they were dropped off, do you know?
Don't know that yet.
Okay.
One last question, guys.
Bud, you asked about the children are uninjured, so yeah, that, the mother.
She's uninjured.
She's uninjured as well.
But the children were not with him at the time of the shooting.
No.
No, that's correct.
They
They
were
were not.
false
And your
friends.
history of the domestic violence?
You wanna
Yes.
talk about the history?
We have multiple calls, multiple history between our complainant and Mr. Douglas.
Okay, appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
As soon as we get